Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Out of the tedium and tension of our earthly days, we have come once again to this place of comfort and challenge. And in our meeting is the hope of finding ourselves, not as isolated beings abandoned to look after ourselves, but as a vibrant community of mutual sharing and trust. So this is what we seek now as we open our hearts to each other. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul. May that be so. Let's sing about that candle. Number 157 in the Purple Book, The Flame of Truth. Mistake. Yeah, it's 157 in the Purple Book. The Flame of Truth is kindled. Oh, there's one called The Flame of Truth and Flame of Love. Yeah, so it's on me. Can you think you can play 158? It's stand up for Jesus, Unitarianized. Sorry all. Sorry out there in Cyberland.
Amongst us moves the Spirit.
Sorry about that little error, but maybe we started learning another song we can sing sometimes. Look outside for a minute. Have a look outside. You see what's happening? It's all change. It's all change. And actually, if we tried to get through an hour without being aware of that, without mentioning it, we wouldn't be doing our jobs. So I've chosen a reading, and this is called September Meditation by a man named Burton Carley. Where he lives, somewhere in the north of North America, his September would be our October. So let's just transpose in our own minds. And he says, I do not know if the seasons remember their history, or if the days and nights by which we count time remember their own passing. I do not know if the oak tree remembers its planting, or if the pine remembers its slow climb towards sun and stars. I do not know if the squirrel remembers last fall's gathering, or if the blue jay remembers the meaning of snow. I do not know if the air remembers September, or if the night remembers the moon. I do not know if the earth remembers the flowers from last spring, or if the evergreen remembers that it shall stay so. Perhaps that's the reason for our births, to be the memory for creation. Perhaps salvation is something very different than anyone ever expected. Perhaps this will be the only question we will have to answer. What can you tell me about September? That's where we're headed this morning, to see what we can say about September. Meanwhile, we're just passing through, aren't we, Lowell?
We are passing through.
Would you sing that to us? Mike, right.
This is a sort of modern folk song. It's written by the American folk singer Pete Seeger.
Unitarian.
I saw Adam leave the garden with an apple in his hand. I said, now you out, what you all gonna do? He said, plant some seeds, pray for rain. Maybe I'll raise a little cane. I'm an orphan now, I'm only passing through. Passing through, passing through. Sometimes happy, sometimes blue. Glad I ran into you. Tell your folks you saw me passing through. I saw Jesus on the cross on a hill called Calvary. I said, you hate them folks now, what they done to you? He said, talk of love, not hate, things to do. It's getting late, I've so little time, I'm only passing through. Passing through, passing through. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes blue. Glad I ran into you. Tell your folks you saw me passing through. I was at Franklin Roosevelt's side. On the night before he died, he said one world must come out of World War II. Yankee, Russian, white or tan, a man is still a man. We all on one road, we only passing through. We all on one road, we only passing through. Passing through, passing through. Sometimes happy, sometimes blue. Glad I ran into you. Tell your folks you saw me passing through. Tell your folks back home you done saw me passing through. Mr. Seeger.
Thank you, Law. That reminds me of a little tale, which I'm going to tell you, about a young man who was a seeker after truth. And he spent many years reading books, watching DVDs, speaking to everybody he could about truth. And finally he heard about a man who had embodied truth, a kind of a master. And he said, well, where is this guy? And people said, I don't know. We only know him through his few books that he's written. So he went on this long period of investigation through the publisher and finally tracked this missing master down to a small town in the middle of Iowa and to an address which was a flat above a hardware store. And he went up the steps and he knocked on the door, and after a brief wait, the man came to the door. He said, I've been looking everywhere for you. And the man said, you found me, come in. Went into this flat. There was nothing in the flat except a table, a chair, and a mattress on the floor. And the young man said, where's your furniture? And the master said to him, where's yours? The young man said, no, I'm just passing through. The master said, so am I. Let's think about autumn now. Let's usher it in, this time of drawing close to the fire, this time of drawing closer to each other and becoming reacquainted with our own hearts. And so let us put away summer's promise of apparently endless opportunity. And let's gather ourselves in the urgency of this season. Let us turn from the recklessness of abundant light to the cherishing of light within. We have other tasks ahead now. So let us embrace them. And so we turn our thoughts to those things which we have still to do for the clutch of the winter nights. There are memories to collect and store. There are contacts to strengthen, apologies to make, forgiveness freely to give, hurts to heal, love to bestow. In the golden blaze of leaf and hearth, there will be stories to tell, gentleness to offer, gifts to give. We have no time now for regret over broken promises or lost hopes. The season of ripening is the time of acceptance. We're drawn into this day, this time, this season by the plenty of life's offering. And it is both our duty and our pleasure to be here. And we may find in it reason enough for our being. But being here now, we may find something we believed lost, something new that makes sense of things, a prayer rising from pure hearts through the confusion of events we call life. And no one can instruct us in giving rise to this prayer. It was there as long as we have lived. It's more familiar than we expected. It is nearer than we ever dared hope. And so this is the moment in which we seek it, enabled by this community that surrounds us, emboldened by the invitation of unexpected love, made holy through our own intention as we go together once again into that good silence. Let's hear the words of that sometime Unitarian Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of suns and the round ocean and the living air, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. So be it. Inshallah. Shalom. Amen. It's not quite winter yet, but one of my favorite songs now becomes seasonal again, or a bit. So I actually pray that this is the right number. Number 27 in the Purple Book. Dark of winter, soft and still.
Soft and still,
You see, that's a very beautiful song, and I wait for it. It's one of the few compensations about cold weather, is we can play that song and sing it. So what does the bus driver say when you get to the end of the line? No, he says, all change. All change. Yeah. So the train, they do the same thing. And that was really pretty strange to my American ears when I first heard it, because I think Americans would probably say, that's the end of the line, Mac. Yeah, beat it. But now I've learned to like it. It's not actually the end of your journey after all. It's just a punctuation mark. You probably got farther yet to go. All you have to do is change. Well, this time of year has always been an all change season for me. You change your clothes, you change your travel arrangements, then they change the clocks. I've often made changes in home and career in autumn, some for better, some worse. I should be getting used to it by now, but I find that I'm still reluctant. The pandemic has made it even worse, but I have to admit that it is actually probably, if you boil it down, change itself that I always object to. I'm convinced that despite all the political slogans about changing this and changing that people hate change, really. They say that it's the older ones who most dislike it, but I think it's everybody. You won't find anyone who hates change more than a 6-year-old. Try it sometime on a kid. Change the smallest thing in the way stories are told and dinner is served, or how grandma arrives, or whatever it is, and it's panic stations. I don't know, for all I know, bugs hate change. It's probably something in our DNA. But we all know you cannot set back the clock of history like they try to do at the end of October with the real clocks. Old boy Heraclitus told us 2,500 years ago, you can't dip your foot in the same river twice. Everything is change. In fact, the only constant is change. So the message to us is clear: don't resist it. Try to go with the flow. Well, I think the key to living with inevitable change is just to relax and let it happen. I know that's a lot easier said than done. To call upon our experience to reassure us that when we just let natural things go ahead and happen, it turns out to be not so bad, not nearly as bad as we feared. Fight really bad changes, of course, but definitely learn to know the difference. And here we are again. The other day I got up. I saw that the sky had collapsed during the night. The shrubs in the garden were sagging wearily under the weight of last night's rainfall. There wasn't enough light left in the whole world to read the addresses on the pile of posts. One of my knees was up to its intermittent tricks, cracking when I walked. The gray of the looming winter was rattling its damp saber at me, making me mortal again, after the buoyant, false immortality of summertime. And the message was unmistakable. It was clear. Oh, hell, it's autumn again. In autumn, you put on different clothes. It's still too warm for the comforting camouflage of coats, which cover all kinds of dressing sins. But short sleeves are silly and unfashionable. It's wrong. You don't trust the weather. You peer at the sky as if it might betray you. This is no time for basking. The winds that were welcome in the heat of August seem to have this ominous quality. as if they're blowing away the laughter and blowing away the fun and the laziness of summer. Well, at least the leaves have had the good grace not to completely turn yet, although I've been seeing a few yellow ones on my street. Maybe you have too. Once that happens, you know you've got a real case of autumn to deal with. And then the sun, we had some sun. It appears like an extra pudding after a meal. It makes you stop cautiously to catch the last rays of the sun, knowing that you're unlikely to see it again for quite a long time. And it's still light until, well, roughly 7 o'clock. They haven't yet pulled that cruel trick of backing up the clock and making it dark at tea time. But they will. Oh yes, they will. In my autumn mood, I realize that really what's going on is that I've got some soul work to do. I have to stop opposing the change of season. After all, I can say lots of things about autumn that redeem it. The light has become golden. The shadows have lengthened, making everything look a bit more interesting. Colors tend to stand out more than under the white glare of summer light. If we lived in the country, we would smell burning leaves. Remember that? Smell burning leaves in piles. And then the first wood fires, back when that was allowed, and that would trigger something fine in our human memories. So what's wrong with me? Why do I still resist it every year? Giving rise to the question, is it actually the season, or is it my own personal autumn that I need to embrace? Many years ago, I was painting a sign on the outside of a building. I was in the Mexican restaurant business. I was up on a ladder. I was using this extremely expensive sign paint, and I was going really slowly. About mid-afternoon, the clouds, those North Carolina storm clouds, started to gather. And I panicked, and I started working faster with this growing sense of disaster. I might be hurrying through a doomed project, but I didn't know what else to do. So I was slapping it on, and just then a guy walked by. I recognized him. He was called Hey Bob, because you can call him Hey Bob. So I did, Hey Bob. He said, yeah. He had been a master builder, decorator before arthritis got him. And I said, look, here I'm up on this ladder, and look at the sky, and look at this paint. It costs 3 times what ordinary paint costs. He said, you know what I'd do if I were you? I said, no. He said, I'd let it rain. And he was right. It was hard enough to paint a sign without trying to stop the weather. And it all worked out in the end, so I keep that close to my chest. Let it rain. Good old Hey Bob. One way of looking at the year is to compare it to the seasons of a human life. So go on this little journey with me now. According to this story, children are somewhere back in January or February. And a whole lot's going on with them, mostly under the surface. Roots and stolons are creeping unnoticed through the invisible layers of the self, forming connections and anchoring them to the world. And it's also almost time for crocuses, you know? Almost time when unexpectedly and delightfully these yellow flowers pop up out of the soil. But how they grow, how the kids grow, how they surprise us with their relentless urge to manifest. Yesterday, they were just little small thoughts. Today, they're the first harbingers of immortality. And meanwhile, these kids are asking in every word and deed, Who am I? Who am I? And by the time you reach the end of March, say with the age of 20, your life is really getting going. Buds are opening all over the place. Life is sexual. It's full of sap. Rough rains and brash winds whip all around us. Things take on an almost cruel urgency. Anything is possible. Everything is likely. You can't contain April. It's too driven. When we get to June, our middle 30s, we're established. The sun can only nourish us. Whether it rains or shines, whether it delivers its golden light or not, we are well rooted then. We are confident. The summer stretches before us, if not infinite, at least too long to worry about. We race upward. Already we're as high as an elephant's eye. Nothing's going to stop us. Having sprouted with such vigor, we feel that limits are unlikely. Fortunately, we've reached the age when we know pretty much everything there is to know. We've arrived through the uncertain days of spring and the unconsciousness of winter. We're alive. Hey, let's do it. And by August, we've lived through a long season of energy and growth. We've begun to slow down, but not because we must. We've done it because the summer has wrapped itself around us like this magical cloak. We are maturing. Our colors are golden. We're heavy with fresh, delectable fruit. The 40s have come for us, and we have assumed our true shape. We're strong. We're intelligent. But the whisper in the background might ask, but are we wise? And then September catches us by surprise. The bank holiday weekend comes and goes. All at once, we're 50. The fruits of promise have become actual. Our heaviness in the morning is the heaviness of the good harvest. And without realizing it, we have begun to stack the sheaves and mill the corn and press the cider. The velvet, smooth green of the pod has acquired spots and wrinkles and creases. Only the pea inside is youthful and appetizing. The light that we felt would last forever tilts, leans. We're aware of shadows, long ones that stretch beyond the limits of our seeing, and the days pass, and now we try to catch them. We try to catch those days. Stay a while longer, summer, just a little while longer. And then autumn finds us fat with riches, a harvest of family, a hoard of stories to make our loved ones laugh and listen. But there have been so many happenings, so many things past that we forget just a little bit. The comforts of the hearth appeal to us now. What was all that mad energy of the spring? Why do we believe everything was so important? Why were we always pregnant with unborn possibility? There's a kind of relief here in this state of post-harvest calm, and we enjoy it, but there is something else as well. Because around us, others have already succumbed and fallen like dry stalks. They lie visible to our eyes. And we ask, have we really made a true harvest? Is the missing cipher that will endow our days with meaning safely stored away from mold and moth? And if we find it, will we even know? And as the days of autumn shrink and shorten, we feel the wind. This is not the brash gusts of April when we were supple and could bend, nor were the cooling zephyrs of summer that ruffled us with sensual pleasure, because the wind now carries the cold. It reminds us of our first groping days back in February when we first asked, "Who am I?" But this time the answer is not for later. It's for now. We rifle the stores of dream and memory. We exhumed vanished hopes. We set them on the mantelpiece, which has become, at last, an altar. The snow is silent. It muffles the rude cries of the children, the optimistic answers of the young, and the mellow tales of the mature. Hearing the silence is our task now. Permitting the snow in the dark, that's a high calling. When the words have lost their meaning, only that remains, and this question: is it enough? Does that seem like a bleak prescription? I believe it's actually an opportunity. I believe that it actually conceals a blessing. In the relative stillness of autumn, freed of the distractions of yet more new projects and yet more new ways to ignore the reality of change, lies a route to fulfillment. Yes, the winter lies ahead, but not definitely a winter of discontent. The earlier times of our year may be a time of growth and new directions, but the winter, that's the time of completion. And by now we have the tools, we have the experience to confront the cold. It is almost as if our whole lives have been a preparation for the time when we stopped at last looking outward. All those beguiling directions, and began to look inside, where the answers and the payoff have always been. So I say, winter, bring it on. Amen. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I'd rather listen to that than a sermon any day. Was that Joni Mitchell sung by Judy Collins? Yeah, I think Judy Collins sang it and Joni Mitchell wrote it. Yeah, YouTube is just gonna like jam us up with adverts now. But if a song has got copyright attached to it, then they demand the right to put adverts for shoes and lipstick and stuff like that up. But so far, with our 16 to 32 viewers average, they haven't felt it was worth it. Yeah, and we have to remember that we are not just the few of us sitting here on this chilly morning, that we are big. Hello, everybody out there in Cyberland. Hi. Yeah, on Saturday coming up, we're playing host to the LDPA, that's the London District Provincial Association of Churches, Unitarian churches, and their quarterly meeting, but it's more than a quarterly gathering. It has to do with, they're going to induct Jim Corrigal, the new district minister, and welcome two or three new ministers in the Southeast. So that's all happening here. The first part of it is just going to be like a very brief service, and then they're going to be doing all their welcoming stuff, and be interesting for some of us. And then we're having a feast afterwards. So do come if you feel like it. It's on at 2:30, it begins, and we should be out of here by dark, even if they mess with the clocks, which they might do. Yeah. So coming to that. Welcome to Harrison and Vanessa, for whom I have got letters for the Home Office. And I was calculating the other day that we have almost certainly produced more than 200 letters over the last 7 years for people who can't go home because of their sexuality. And one of the things that we often forget about, at least I do, but I keep bringing myself up to remember, is that these people are homesick. They're not beguiled by the bright lights and big city that we live in. They would rather be at home. And so there's a lot of pain in that. So we won't be glib about it. We'll do everything we can to help. And certainly, Vanessa, you've been coming here for years now. You've been a real joy to have in here, and we're pulling for you. So stick around for coffee afterwards and talk to Harrison. We've got Kenya and Uganda here represented. Yeah. So, have I forgotten anything there? Well, let's sing number 234 in the Green Book, Please God, Grant That It's Right. Now, whether we've been comforted or troubled this morning, shaken or stirred, made to feel lost or to feel found, let us turn now from this hour with minds more open, with hearts more tender, and hands more willing. Let us go out into a world transformed by our seeing and made more just and more decent by our deeds. And for this, let us look after one another, because we know we can, until we meet again. Amen.